Tucker Carlson went on the Joe Rogan Experience Friday. He doesn't think America should have used the nuclear weapon.
Dropping nuclear weapons on civilians, that's just like prima facie evil.
The main point he brought up was humans became their own god when we created the nuclear bomb and used it on people because we now became more powerful than anything else. It's very polarizing. People took a lot of different sides on it. Even, I believe the CEO of Daily Wire said, if you disagree with America using the atomic bomb, you hate America. Quite a statement to say. But I have to say, for you guys, like, this is kind of talked about all the time, but what do you think? Like, do you think that you can simultaneously hold, well, maybe we shouldn't have used it, or maybe I'm a little sad that we used it, but we needed to? Like, what, Josh, you're a history guy. Like, what do you think on all that?
I certainly strongly disagree with that statement. Like, Fulton Sheen was somebody who was against us using the atomic bomb. And he said that was, we sort of lost Mary's protection that way. And I agree with him. But like, I remember I talked with my own grandfather, who, we've since buried, but he fought in the Pacific theater of the war. And I would ask him about what he thought about the nuclear, war. And it's not just an academic theory on the internet that you get in a debate with somebody, 75 years after the fact. We're talking about his life. And he said he justified the use of it, which I think it's probably not morally justified. Okay, I agree with the church. I don't think it's morally justified. But again, here's the other thing. It's a lot easier to say that 75 years after the fact than it was at that time. And in fact, Japan, in the engagements that we had with the Empire of Japan, these people were extremely ruthless. And one of the problems with total war is that it has the tyranny has the ability to corrupt even its combatants. So, you start thinking about how evil Hitler is and how evil the Empire of Japan is, and you think to yourself, they have no understanding of treating, prisoners of war fairly. They attack civilian targets all the time, and you think to yourself, we have to crush these people because we cannot allow Hitler to take over all of Europe. We can't allow the Empire of Japan to take over the entire, East Asia. And so then you start thinking about doing the unthinkable. And when you have a weapon like this, you start to think, maybe it's justified. Again, I don't think it was a justified thing, but I'm not gonna throw stones at the people who made the decision differently, because the fact is, you saw what I like to let people know about this. As we were preparing for the land invasion of Japan, the War Department put together, I think, about 250,000 Purple Hearts that they anticipated that they'd be needing to give and put it onto the soldiers that were going to be invading. That was, 1944, right? It has now been 80 years since, right? And we still have not exhausted the number of Purple Hearts that we had ready to go for that war. So again, this is one of my biggest things I always like to tell people about. It's like, it's so much easier with hindsight of history when you're not dealing with that problem. But if you put yourself in someone else's shoes, then it's a lot. Again, Robbie George is a professor at Princeton. He made this point really well. He said to his class, and these are a lot of liberals at Princeton, he said, if you lived in Charleston, South Carolina in 1860, would you be against slavery? And everyone in the entire class, they all raised their hand. Oh yeah, of course. And he just laughed at him. He said, of the 100 people in this room, one of you would have had your hand raised, actually, if you're being honest. And you would have lost your job. And people would not ever want to talk to you ever again. They would never want to associate with you again. And so it's so easy to say, oh yeah, if I could jump in a DeLorean and go back in time and go back to 1944, I would have made the moral right decision. Sure. You know what though? It's a fallen world and we're all sinful. And so I think we need to be a little bit more humble and realize that we might have been making just as many bad decisions ourselves. We try to learn from history, of course.
I do agree with Josh. It's one of those things where it's easy to sit back in our cushy situation now and look back and say, well, I wouldn't have done that. It's like, well, would you not have? Because what about the lives that were at risk? I mean, I don't remember the exact expected life expectancy of an entry-level military male that jumps out of a plane during World War II. I think it was like 45 seconds. And so it's like, that was the reality. You knew that you were walking into these young men. I mean, everybody had someone they loved that was involved. And so when you're told the life expectancy of this young guy is 45 seconds, it's like, yeah, okay, that's some heavy stuff.
Yeah, I guess my problem with it is when people come out and say, like, okay, if you even question the use of it, you're not American or you hate the country somehow. And I think it does, back to Tucker's point, if you question things like that, like, should we have used it? Should we not have used it? It opens up a can of worms into questioning other things. And other things that he talked about, for example, was like not revealing government documents about the JFK assassination or about 9/11. Like, there's a lot of stuff that's still not public about those, like, really, truly American tragedies, to the point where it might be too destabilizing for Americans to know. But I think you can still be a good American and question the government's intent. I mean, anyone that's lived for the last 4 years, I think, has maybe experienced a smidge of that. I know I sure have. But yeah, it doesn't make you less American. If anything, I think it makes you more American, because we've had the great benefit of being able to debate publicly, to actually engage in the decisions our government makes, as opposed to other systems where you would really have no say, like, as to whether or not bombs drop somewhere. Like, the idea is Congress declares war.